Hello everyone and welcome back to Beatley Tone's Beatles channel. Lovely to have you here. Thanks for joining me for this video and I hope you're all doing well. Now in today's video I'm going to be sort of paying a little bit of homage to the compact disc, the CD, because last month, August 2022, was unbelievably 40 years since the arrival of the first commercially available CDs. I believe that ABBA's The Visitors was in that first batch of CDs that was released in 1982. But I'm not going to make this a history lesson. I'm going to talk about my particular journey, my transition from LPs, vinyl, to CDs, because I think it's a transition that everybody has made at some point or other. So I think it'll be something that you'll relate to, and I want to tell you my story about how I eventually succumbed to the CD. So make yourself comfy, put your feet up on the sofa, get yourself a cup of tea or a beer or something, sit back, relax, and let's go back to 1982. So I think the first time I ever heard anything about compact disc was on a British programme called Tomorrow's World. Now if you don't know, Tomorrow's World was a long-standing TV show, a science show where they talked about new inventions. Not that I was an avid watcher of this, because sort of science wasn't really my thing at that young age, but it just happened to always be scheduled to be on directly before Top of the Pops, so I'd come down to watch Top of the Pops and always sort of catch the end of it. And on this particular episode of Tomorrow's World, the presenter told us that this sort of novelty 5-inch disc was the future of music. This was how we would buy music and this was how we would listen to music in the future. So this fella on Tomorrow's World, he had the audacity to tell me that vinyl that was housed in these cardboard, 12-inch cardboard packages were about to become obsolete. But we'd heard it all before. There'd been other challengers to vinyl's crown. There was reel-to-reel tapes, there was the pre-recorded cassette, there was 8 tracks, there was even a brief flirtation with Laserdisc. But here we all were, still buying our records on vinyl, loving them with their enticing album art and their gatefold sleeves and their inner sleeves with printed lyrics and their beautiful labels that adorned the crisp black vinyl. We were still buying them. We'd invested in vinyl. We'd invested heavily in vinyl, and vinyl was still king of the castle. So it was a case of, you know, come on CD, show us your wares, come and have a go if you think you're hard enough, but you know you'll be sent packing just like all the other pretenders before you. The presenter referred to these things as CDs as if he was already familiar enough with the format to give them an acronym, and he told us that we would hear our music with a quality of sound that vinyl could only aspire to if it had been given one final request by its fairy godmother. But not only that, there would be no jumps, no skips, no scratches, no crackles, no pops, because these things were indestructible. We demonstrated this by rubbing a scouring pad over the disc and spreading jam on it. Apparently you could throw a couple of them on the Barbie, douse them in ketchup and mustard, put them between 2 buns, eat them, poo them out, and they would still play as new. Obviously the Tomorrow's World presenter didn't do the barbecue thing, that was just me. But he did do the spreading of the jam and the scouring pad thing, and what he was trying to demonstrate was that digital music would never deteriorate. He told us about all the ones and the zeros going round and round and round and round, embedded into this piece of plastic, and how they would be read by a laser rather than a needle, and if you stretch them out in a big line they would be about 2 miles long. But we didn't know anything about digital back in 1982. Digital schmigital, we didn't know. They could have told us anything. And how did we know that he was right? I mean, what if they were wrong? Science can be wrong sometimes. It's a funny old bugger like that. And what if one day, 10 years time, we're just holding our CDs and we suddenly see all the digital wonderfulness just dripping off the disc into a great big pool of molten rock on the carpet. Then what? So as for all this digital news, I wasn't buying it. Literally, I wasn't buying it. I was happy with the vinyl format, and I liked all the little crackles and pops that you hear on a record. I felt they were part of my own personal pop history. You know, a well-worn record is a well-loved record. And, you know, I liked great big 12-inch records in great big 12-inch sleeves with the great big inner sleeves with lyrics that you could actually read without the aid of a telescope. You know, don't let anyone tell you that size isn't important, because it is. And not only is size important, but history is important as well. And I'm not just talking about the crackles and the pops. I'm talking about those little reminders that the sleeves give us, like this inner sleeve here where the side has come unglued, or the ones where you have the white inner bags where the record peeps out of the bottom, and it's there just to remind you of the hundreds and hundreds of times that you've plopped that record in and out of that inner sleeve. And then there's this record here, 24 Karat Purple. I don't know if you can see that crease there, but that's there to purely to remind me of the time when I was playing tennis racket guitar in front of my bedroom mirror, and I leaned back so far during one of its solos that I fell back on the bed and landed on the sleeve. It's an emotional attachment that no modernisation or buffing up could ever dislodge. So for now, I was sticking with records. So as we got a little bit deeper into the 80s, whenever I went into a record shop, I could see that all the CD racks were getting more and more plentiful and the LP racks were shrinking, but I was still standing firm. I mean, it didn't stop me from going in and having a look and having a little flick through the CDs just to feel what they felt like in my hand. But my first sort of real moment of weakness was when I spotted that this album, Give My Regards to Broad Street, had an extra track on it, Goodnight Princess, which wasn't on my LP. I mean, it was only an instrumental, but I still had a little wobble because it meant there was a song by a Beatle that I didn't have. Luckily, it was on the cassette, so I just got that. But, you know, people that I knew now had CD players, and so I was able to hear CD quite a lot and how fantastic it sounded, and my head was turning for sure. But I just could not afford a CD player at that time. I had a mortgage, so it just wasn't doable even if I wanted to. Apple were almost as slow as I was in jumping upon the CD bandwagon, but when they announced in late 86 that the first 4 albums were going to be coming out on CD for the first time in February 1987, that really was the last nail in my coffin of resolve. I mean, I use that as an excuse, but really it was a matter of when rather than if I would make the transition, and the time for resisting was now over, and it was time for me to drop my trousers, bend over and yelp helplessly at compact disc, take me, I'm all yours. In 1986, I changed my job, earning a little bit more money, a little bit more disposable income. I was able to start saving for my first CD player. I also had a mate who worked in a hi-fi shop near where I lived, and with the help of his staff discount, I was able to cobble enough money together to get my first CD player. I went into his shop for a demo, and he played me this album, Brothers in Arms by Dire Straits, and it sounded absolutely phenomenal. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I was really excited about getting my CD player. I chose a Denon CD player. It was like a MIDI-sized player in black, which didn't look that great against my full-size silver hi-fi components that I already had, but because it was MIDI sized, it was cheaper and more affordable. I was going to pick it up the following Saturday, and in the week I was so excited about getting it that I went out and I bought my first ever CD, and it was this one, John Lennon's Shaved Fish, and I couldn't wait to hear this album on my new CD player. So I had my CD player, I had my first CD. I was now a fully fledged member of the CD generation. I'd owned the Shaved Fish album on LP since 1976. I bought it second hand off a kid from school, and it came complete with pops and crackles and a little jump on Instant Karma. But here I was 11 years later, hearing it like it was a brand new album, hearing things that I never heard before, and feeling a little bit unfamiliar with Instant Karma without the jump that I was used to. I mean, CD was a revelation, there's no doubt about that. A little clinical and a little clean and a little top heavy, especially at this sort of entry level, but without the sort of the warmth and the depth of vinyl, but a revelation nonetheless. I made myself all rules and boundaries about how I was going to handle this transition, and what I was definitely not going to do was buy up my whole record collection again on CD. I decided that I was going to buy compilation albums of my favourite artists, compilation albums that I'd never owned on LP, because I had all the albums and singles, and I would be buying them just for their pure sonic beauty. But this was also aided by the record labels, who hadn't yet relaunched all their artists' back catalogue on CD yet, but it wouldn't be long before they did, and every major artist was having their entire works out on CD, which meant it wouldn't be long before my golden rule was out the window. It didn't feel good, and it certainly didn't feel very clever, as album by album my record collection was being replaced by newer and younger models. I could almost feel the sadness oozing out of my battered old records, and I wanted to offer them words of hope and encouragement, tell them that they were still important to me and they had an important job to do. They still had a purpose. There would be no wholesale redundancies, and they were part of my future plans, and all I was doing was just moving with the times. But it would have been a lie. What was actually happening was Thatcherism for records right here in my front room. What I was doing to those records was no better than what Margaret Thatcher did to the miners. It was an easy enough trap to fall into, and I fell into it hook, line and sinker. I mean, just to have all your old music sounding all new and fresh and buffed up for the digital age was a reasonable enough selling point. But when you add to that the phenomena of the unreleased bonus tracks, that was just the gift that just kept on giving, and something that was brought to us exclusively for CD by the music industry. I mean, the demos and the outtakes and the live recordings had been like the food and drink domain of the bootleg industry, but here it was being offered on ordinary CDs without the under the table shenanigans that we were used to with bootlegs, and I just used that as an excuse to buy up all my old records. But not only could we buy something that we already owned again at £10 a pop for a CD, we could now buy them at 3 times the original price. It's absolute genius when you think about it. Once you got your CD, although the music was pristine, what was really unsatisfactory was the packaging, and they came in these brittle boxes that they called jewel cases, and I often wondered why they called them jewel cases. Mind you, I've also spent time wondering why a shoe's called a shoe, but there you go. But if you remember, when we first got these were really difficult to negotiate how to open them, and they took no prisoners. Plenty of fingernails, but no prisoners. But we got used to how to get them open, and the CD was housed on these little spoked hubs that always broke, like this one here. But it didn't matter when your hubs broke like that, because these things were indestructible, right? So they could rattle around inside the case for all they're worth, and it wouldn't matter a jot. But double albums, they came in these great big cumbersome boxes, like 2 jewel cases stuck together. But what was really unsatisfactory was the artwork, like the White Album poster, for example, which comes in little 5-inch sections. And what is the point of that? What are we supposed to do? Take the staples out of this and take all the bits of the poster out, put them all together again and hang them up at Ken and Barbie's house? With records, we tended to listen to the whole thing, the good tracks, the bad tracks, the utterly average tracks, you know, short of getting up off the sofa and lifting the needle every time a track came on that you didn't like. We either enjoyed it or suffered it all accordingly. But CD and CD players, they changed all that with their fancy programming facilities. They enabled us to skip the tracks that we didn't like if we wanted, and we never had to listen to them ever again. Fast forward 30 years, or hit the skip button if you like, and we now observe that CD did change the way that we listen to music forever, just like that bloke on Tomorrow's World promised that it would back in 1982, because CD formed the prototype of how a lot of us listen to music now, the playlist. Almost unbelievably, a few years ago, vinyl started making a comeback, and it took me almost as long to come back to vinyl as it had to make that decision to leave vinyl in the first place for CD. But it took the release of McCartney 3 to encourage me to buy my first vinyl album for many, many years. But I still buy CDs because I like to listen to vinyl on my main hi-fi in my lounge. But, you know, I want CDs so I can rip them to my phone or my computer or my multi-room streaming device thing. So both formats have still got value for me, and I still buy both things. You know, I moaned about the way that CDs were presented when they first came out, but look how far CD has come in its first 40 years, from this original basic Please Please Me from 1987 to this beautiful, I think they call this a digi sleeve, where they replicate the original sleeve even with the fold backs on the mono Please Please Me, and they even give you a replica in a bag and the disc with a printed label, to the stereo Please Please Me with its tri-fold digipack sleeve and gorgeous disc. And look how the book has evolved. I mean, they still call it a booklet. Is there a less rock and roll word than booklet? But they still have them, and you know, this one is expanded to several pages now. This is the stereo 2009 version, and that's how far it's come. But is that as far as it's come? No, because we've got gorgeous box sets with books and 5 CDs and things like that. It's come a long way. It really has come a long way, and I hope you've enjoyed this little trip down memory lane, looking back at CD and saying happy 40th anniversary to the compact disc. Can you remember what the first CD was that you bought? If you can, tell me down in the comments. Tell me if you still buy CDs, or if you've gone back to vinyl completely and don't touch them anymore, or if you've never left CDs. I want to hear about it. As you know, I read all your comments and I will answer them, although I am now on holiday, so if you don't hear back from me straight away, then I'm not ignoring you, and will get back to you on your comment as soon as I can. Well, thanks very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the video. The next video, we're going to be taking a deep dive into the Paul McCartney archive collection. We're going to be doing Wings at the Speed of Sound. I'll be showing you the whole book, all the bits and pieces that you get in it. So please join me for that video. Thanks for watching this one, and I'll see you all soon. Bye bye.